explore the three bodies and the three states of consciousness. And of course these relate to each other. And so I want to talk about the integration of those. Today we're going to be working with the integration of these bodies and states of consciousness and the interaction with each other. So the two obvious paths, one is activate the bodies, and sometimes you get the states of consciousness. So for example, when you're dancing, first of all, the vital body gets activated, and then basically the light body turns on, and maybe you end up feeling some ecstasy. And sometimes that produces higher states of consciousness, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people can just keep doing the physical things to experience their bodies, but not necessarily transformation or enlightenment. The other path is that people through meditation can really develop their states of consciousness. They can hang out in the void, develop soul awareness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they become embodied, that they can activate and bring those bodies into full expression. So the idea of integration is that you can, whether you go state of consciousness first, which then produces the bodies, or whether you activate the bodies, which produces the state of consciousness, you're working with them both. And of course, the danger in our society is that we tend to do doing first and leave being to later. So, just
being first and doing.
We tend to do doing first and then leave being. So most people in Western society are still busy doing, making a living, running around like ants in their beehive, trying to survive. And then they hope that after they've done all that doing, there'll be time for a little bit of loving, maybe with one special person, on a weekend romantic thing. And then after the loving, if they're lucky, maybe there will be a moment on holiday where they get to. So most of our society is biased towards doing because our state of consciousness is still stuck in body-mind. And then a little bit of loving, and then maybe some being. But if you try the other way, you start with being, start with that connection in the void, and then allow loving, and then allow doing, something else happens, and a different kind of civilization is born. When I was working with this in my own life, I took a year where I didn't do anything. And I particularly didn't do anything if the doing was arising out of fear, or a to-do list, or a should, or anything that drives doing. So for the first 6 months, basically, I did nothing. It was an undoing of all of the motivations for doing that come from the conditioning of our society. And then eventually, there's a drop into a place of love, and then if you keep not doing, then you drop into the void. And when you can rest in pure being and wait there, then loving arises, and then doing comes. And everybody can feel the difference between doing that has being in it and loving in it, and doing that is just mechanical. So, for example, now a lot of people have become conscious, and you can tell the difference between food that's just prepared as a mechanical thing and food that is prepared with love. And so many people have then moved into at least loving first before doing. Okay, starting with love, feeling what their gift is, what their contribution to the world is, what opens their heart, and then making that their doing. So that's the moving into the middle circle. Now you're the soul who is doing, but you're doing out of your love and your contribution and your mastery. The thing is, even that loving then doing is still not being. So on the spiritual path, that place of loving often is also coming out of a wound, which is what makes teachers and counselors and healers are often coming out of a hidden wound. And I call that the bodhisattva wound. Because as we experienced last night, the deep truth is perfection. There's in the void, there is no suffering, there is nothing wrong, everything is perfect. It's eternally perfect. So something makes us leave that, and it's love. And it's a particular kind of love. It's a love for brothers and sisters, because we are all one, stuck in samsara or pain or suffering and incarnation. It's a love for experiencing manifestation. Whatever it is, it's a love. And most of us have a particular kind of love that most calls us. So one of the ways of deeply working with your soul purpose is to see what suffering moves you most deeply on the planet. Is it the starving children that call you? Is it the suffering of ignorance? Is it the environment? Is it whales dying in the oceans because of the way that we're treated? What is it? What is the suffering that actually brought you out of the great perfection? Something brings you out of the void. And that's really your soul calling. But that soul calling also reflects something about you. It reflects the place of deep tenderness and sensitivity towards that particular kind of suffering. So in order to really rest in being, you need to also find not just the grit and the oyster of the personal life, which is how you became inauthentic in order to get light, basically, but you also need to open the pearl in the core of the soul, the grit in the core of the soul, which is, what is the particular kind of suffering as a soul that moves me most deeply? Because it's in me. And everybody would have had that experience maybe of healers and counselors and so on. Either they're on the side of being the teacher or healer or counselor and they burn out, or they're receiving that and there's just a little sense of sometimes projection. That really what's going on is they're healing themselves in the name of healing others. And how this works out in our bodies is that sometimes when we are identifying ourselves as the soul, we can think of ourselves as a healer or a lover or a teacher, and then of course everyone else becomes a student or someone to be healed or someone to be loved. Okay, because whatever we identify ourselves with automatically makes a relationship. And the soul and love always deals with relationship. But when you're in the void, there is no relationship. Because there's only one, and then there's none. So, the journey from moving from doing first to awakening love, and then to awakening the life that is the void, means that if you can rest in the void, then your first action is nothing. The first action is to leave everything alone. Okay, because we can see when love is taken from a need, some kind of deep soul need, to heal the world, to save the world, to heal others, there's no peace in that. So, and it's not that healing doesn't need to happen and loving doesn't need to happen, but it needs to happen from a place of peace. You have to start at peace. So, what we want to work with is how to integrate our lives so that all of these levels are available to us. And meditation is one of the major ways, in many types of meditation, to access the state of consciousness of the void so that you can come from a place of peace. And all the embodiment work allows you to experience that in embodiment. So when we're interacting with each other, it's like if you imagine a world that was based not on being driven by fear and need and doing and let's survive, but was based on peace. True peace, not peace being the absence of war or no emotional upset or any of that, but peace being that there was a civilization in touch with the perfection. And then loving, and then doing. So that doing flowed out of being. And you know, we're human beings. That's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to rest in being first. And you can tell this in your interactions with people. Some people, you know, whose state of consciousness is about doing, they see you mainly as someone to do with. Maybe to trade and exchange. You know, maybe you're a plumber and they're an electrician, and you can exchange what you do. And then there's the people that see you from a place of loving. But of course, loving always implies relationship. So loving is, you know, are we a mother-child relationship? Are we lovers? Are my teacher-student? Are we brothers? There's always relationship. But being, when someone meets you with being, they don't want anything from you. So they already are you. And there's a great peace in those relationships because you start with no reaching towards, just being yourself. And then if relating happens, that's great, but it's not the foundation of your connection. The foundation of your connection is shared being. It's always easy to feel this. Where I live on an island where I can feel that state of being, and then when someone comes, it's easy to see, how do we relate? Do we relate through doing? Do we relate through relating? Or actually, do we just leave? In fact, I have a younger brother, and our whole relationship is based on leaving each other alone. But that's a loving act. Loving act, because, and actually he would be the person if I ever needed anything really deeply that I would go to. Because he needs nothing from me and I need nothing from him. So this is the same in the way we do our relating. As long as we're projecting part of our need, and that need can also be a need to love and be loved onto someone else, we're not fully seeing them as a fully sovereign being. And the way we treat others has a lot to do with how they experience themselves in our presence. So if you know, because you've been able to sit in the void and in being, that everybody has that inside them. Everybody is the one. They may not be aware of that, they may not have realized that, but they are that. And of course, they're also a soul and they're also a personal self. But if you start by assuming that everybody is the one, you give them a dignity and a respect that they are God. And in the presence of that dignity and respect, the godliness in them comes forward. You're creating a field. Doesn't mean that they necessarily experience that, but you're treating them as if they are. And this is very powerful in healing too, because at the first stages of healing, people are coming from the feeling of being stuck in a world that doesn't see them and honor them, and they're wanting to be seen and honored as a soul, and they're wanting to heal. And that's great. And at a certain point on the path, the healing is over, and they begin to experience themselves as never needing healing. That there's a place inside them, underneath the wounded place, that was never hurt, never could be hurt, was always free, was always innocent, is eternal, and is the true source of their own healing and their own empowerment and their own life. So at that point, you're offering people back their power by not trying to support them to grow, but by seeing them as perfect, seeing them as already perfect, and at the core, expressing that in your life. So this is kind of the higher version of Mother and Father energy. Mother energy says, come. Father energy says, you can do it yourself. And both of those, that dance of power and love, that sees people as whole and free, and at the same time that sees them as vulnerable and in need of love and in need of healing. That balance is required in our own being. So one of the things to consider today is, how are you in that process of being, loving and doing? Is most of your life around doing and a bit of loving and being gets squeezed in the breaks? Are you all about being? And so much about being that you very rarely connect with the world? Are you racing between being and doing and spending most of your time with loving? What is the integration in your world between these three levels? Because real health is having all of them working. Because if we're just in loving, then often we might be sitting meditating for world peace, which is wonderful on the subtle levels. It makes a contribution. But it doesn't necessarily stop the bombing tomorrow. And doing, that actually they lose their capacity to remember that they are love, and that actually everything's perfect, that nothing needs to. So this also applies when we interact with each other. We're going to go into doing some massage work today. So it's like, that sometimes doing is really good. It's good to go and get some deep tissue work and get your muscles moved. You want someone who's good at doing, who knows actually about where the muscles are and the bones are, particularly when your physical body is needing some doing attention. And it's also really good to be touched with love. When you can feel that actually somebody's hands are connected to their heart, are connected to their soul, are connected to the great ocean. And you're just opening and allowing them to pour love through into your being and your body. That's wonderful too. And then there's the place of being, where somebody just holds space, they do nothing, and in their presence your whole body flowers. That's the bliss body at work. So we want to pay attention to that in the way we interact with each other. And also the respect for people's sovereignty. So, sometimes what happens is people learn a bit of energy healing or whatever, and they're busy trying to, run energy up your chakras or heal you. So now you've become an object for their, identification as a healer, and they're busy healing you. That has no respect for your sovereignty. Okay? It may be wonderful, and you may really want that. And sometimes people get around that by saying, well, I checked in the inner world. I checked in and it was okay with you. But part of this knowing who each person really is, knowing who their identity is, you're in front of God. And they don't need any healing. And they don't need you to do some fancy thing to them so that they can awaken. They're already awake. They may not know that they're awake. And that may be actually serving them too. Sometimes it serves us not to know that we're awake, because we have work to do. So it's that question of the respect and integrity of each person as God, and also how they are presenting. Because you don't really know what's going on inside them. You know who they are. You don't know if they know who they are. And so you're checking in with them. And you're checking in energetically, and you're checking in physically, and you're checking in with yourself. The recommendation always in engaging anyone else is to start with the mindset, which is, I need to do nothing. I'm just in my being and they're whole. So that's the default. And then you can move into, well, what is the relationship here? What is the energetic relationship here? as soul to soul. And then, and how does that translate into physical touch? So I just want to bring in a little bit of consciousness to the way we interact, and also recognize that we're energy beings. And so we're not just interacting with physical touch, we're also interacting with the way we think about each other. You know, and one day, when everything is visible and we can see everything, then thoughts, which direct energy, are going to be totally as important as actions.